This week, as the nation watched President Trump deliver the longest State of the Union address in American history, one of the most poignant images in that chamber was a young woman sitting in the gallery carrying the weight most of us can only imagine. Claire Lai, the daughter of Jimmy Lai, the 78-year-old devout Catholic Apple Daily founder and democracy advocate, who just 2 weeks ago was sentenced to 20 years in a Hong Kong maximum security prison, was present. Claire was the guest of House Speaker Mike Johnson. She's here tonight with co-chair of the Congressional Executive Committee on China, Congressman Chris Smith, to update us on Jimmy's condition and the status of the diplomatic efforts on his behalf. Congressman Smith, Claire, thank you both for being here. Claire, I want to begin with you. Speaker Johnson called your presence at the State of the Union a symbol of America's determination to secure your father's release. When you were sitting in that gallery and the whole world was watching, what was going through your mind?
I mean, firstly, I am so extremely grateful to Speaker Johnson and to Congressman Smith and Mrs. Smith for being able to attend the State of the Union that day. I mean, it was such a privilege to be there for such a significant event, and I mean, what a beautiful address it was. So many, so many people were honored who very much deserved it, and to have received such high praises from so many people and so much support really does mean the world. And just really across the political aisle, we have received so much support. I mean, from President Trump and his administration, from the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, and just also, I mean, like Congressman Molinar and so on, and Senator Rick Scott. I mean, we've just received such a huge amount of support, and we are just so extremely humbled and grateful for it.
Well, Claire, when your father smiled and waved at supporters when he arrived at that sentencing on February 9th, you described that sentence as heartbreakingly cruel. Are you hearing anything on the diplomatic front that's giving you and your family hope? President Trump has mentioned my father a number of times, and on the day of the sentencing, Secretary of State Rubio did put out an extremely strong statement condemning it and asking for his humanitarian release. So we haven't heard what will happen in the upcoming trip, but it does give us cause for hope. And I think if anything, my father's cases have proven that the rule of law in Hong Kong is completely broken, and any solution now has to be a diplomatic, sovereign-to-sovereign one. Mm-hmm. Congressman Smith, with President Trump going to Beijing in April, I mean, Claire just referenced it, how crucial is this moment to make some kind of progress toward Jimmy's release? And what can the president do, aside from raising Jimmy Lai's case again personally to Xi, which he's done in the past?
Well, I think this is an opportunity like no other. I mean, they got the conviction, which was a false conviction. He is guilty of nothing. But he is very ill. He's 78 years old. He got 20 years, which means it is a life sentence. And I have to say that Claire has been an amazing advocate for her dad. You know, Sebastian, in like manner, has also been tenacious throughout the world, as was Claire, is Claire. And I tell you, the way she was greeted on Capitol Hill by so many lawmakers, starting with the Speaker, who is an absolute friend and advocate for Jimmy Lai, and she just was amazing. When he is free, he'll have his two wonderful children to thank, especially for that liberation. And I believe it strongly, that President Trump, who has freed prisoners in Lukashenko's gulags in Belarus, he's gotten prisoners out all over the world. This is, like the quintessential example of what a president can do. It's humanitarian. He is sick, and he ought to be free. And again, Xi Jinping, listen to his daughter, to Jimmy Lai's daughter. Just look her in the eyes. She's just a wonderful person. Again, like Sebastian, his son, the two of them, and what advocates. They're just amazing.
Congressman, you also serve on the Committee on Foreign Affairs.
Yes.
Secretary Rubio, as Claire mentioned, called the sentence of Jimmy Lai an unjust and tragic conclusion.
Yes.
What are you hearing from the State Department about the diplomatic tools at their disposal right now? And is London in the mix, given that Jimmy Lai is a British citizen?
Great question. We have conveyed to the President and to the Secretary of State incredible tools that can be used. I mean, I'm the author of the Hong Kong Human Rights and Democracy Act. I introduced it back in 2014 when the Umbrella Revolution started. Both Marco Rubio and I got the bill passed. It is law. There are all kinds of sanctions that can be deployed because of the ongoing cruelty against not just Jimmy Lai, but all kinds of other amazing democracy advocates, Joshua Wong and the others. So the President, I think, you know, we would greet with great happiness and joy the release of Jimmy Lai, but we want systemic change. There needs to be a recognition that human rights are universal. And Hong Kong, of all places, used to be a place where the Basic Law and the Sino-UK Treaty made it very clear that they had human rights that very much paralleled our own here in the United States. And as for the Prime Minister of the UK, he needs to do more. When Sebastian testified at my hearing in 2023, he made an appeal to the UK government, because Jimmy Lai is a UK citizen, to do something. And, you know, he wrote a very strong letter. They need to go into hyperdrive to say, free this great man. He is sick. And frankly, the ongoing incarceration brings nothing but dishonor to the Chinese Communist Party. This would be at least a step in the right direction. And, you know, big steps are usually preceded by smaller steps. Maybe good things can happen if Xi Jinping does release him. And I do think nobody is better to do that than Donald Trump.
Claire, Congressman Smith mentioned this a bit earlier, but your father's health is deteriorating. His own legal team appealed to the UN Special Rapporteur on torture over his treatment. Is he still being denied the sacraments? Do you know?
You know, the Hong Kong government's position is that he gets it regularly. I mean, for our position is that he gets it extremely intermittently. I mean, to be precise in numbers, he got it 11 times over the course of 2.5 years. I mean, under no definition should that be considered regular. At least one should get it at least 52 times a year, and that's over 2.5 years. That is completely ridiculous. Yeah.
Congressman, Jimmy Lai was convicted in part for meeting with American politicians like yourself.
Yes.
Beijing essentially criminalized contact with the U.S. Congress. If we allow that kind of precedent to stand without any pushback or consequence, what does it mean for every democracy advocate, journalist, Catholic bishop in that part of the world who looks to America as a defender of freedom and an ally?
Well, it'll mean that the best and the bravest and the brightest in China will be hermetically sealed from all contact with anyone who is like-minded on democracy and human rights. And that will be an awful loss. You know, injustice need not be forever. Someday China will be free, and it will be because of men and women, but men like Jimmy Lai, who sacrificed just about everything in order to procure those freedoms. And so we need to push back very hard. The national security law, which is a travesty, means, like you said, any kind of contact with an American will be rewarded with punishment, especially with long prison sentences. I left X. I was on Twitter. I left it in large part because of the Hong Kong Human Rights and Democracy Act. I had 15,000 followers in Hong Kong. I was very fearful that the Chinese Communist Party would take their names and use that as part of their charging document. So it's really, you know, what do they get out of this? Hong Kong used to be an economic miracle. Human rights, they have a thing called the Basic Law that looks just like our Bill of Rights. It wasn't perfect. We're not perfect either. But it at least recognized they had real due process rights. All of it's gone. And now they want to impose that on Taiwan. And frankly, that's why the ASEAN countries are so worried. They want to extend it to other nations as well. We need to stand up strong. And, you know, our president has so many levers at his, and he'll use them, including sanctions. China is an exporting country. They don't survive economically if they don't send their products to the West, especially to the U.S. We need to link human rights with trade. And I have a bill in that would do just that. And short of that, there are all kinds of other sanctions, including Magnitsky sanctions, that can be levied on individuals who are committing atrocities in China.
Yeah. Claire, as I was listening to you both, I thought, if you had an opportunity to speak directly to President Trump tonight and to Prime Minister Keir Starmer, what would you say to them?
I mean, I would say that my father, what my father stood for are values that are shared in America, values that are shared in the UK. Actually, I mean, what he stood for was essentially the agreement that was made between the UK and China, and an agreement that the Chinese side breached. And he is paying the price for that. And right now, China has the opportunity to do the only just and only honorable thing, which is to release my father, my aging father in poor health, so that he can spend his remaining days with his family and serving our Lord, and which is all he wants to do. Yeah.
Yeah. Congressman Smith, I guess the real question to my mind is, didn't we know when the UK handed Hong Kong back to the Chinese that this inevitably would happen, that they would, that Hong Kong could not be its own island of freedom in the midst of this great colossus? Didn't we know that back in the 90s?
That is a great question. In 2014, as the umbrella revolution was taking shape, I introduced the Hong Kong Human Rights and Democracy Act, and I had all kinds of people in this town who said it was misguided. There's no way that Xi Jinping would ever cause anything but the status quo to continue. One, he was bound by, as Claire said, by a treaty that he signed into, that the Chinese Party signed into willingly with the UK. It was supposed to be unchanged for 50 years. Well, that didn't happen. And the basic law, again, was their most fundamental set of freedoms. And I said, people who say that's not going to happen don't know Xi Jinping. Around 2014, he began the genocide against the Uyghurs in Xinjiang. And the people at the Olympic Committee turned a blind eye. We raised all of that back then. But there was concern that there's no way that he's going to allow freedom to flourish when they do nothing but crush it on the mainland. Added to that, just one thing about Jimmy Lai, he loves our Blessed Mother so much. And has such a devotion to Our Lady. And he also is a great follower and loves Fulton Sheen, who all of us find, I do. I've read 5 of his books. I just can't believe how great he is. So we were talking about a great Catholic, a great Christian, a great father. And you see, I told Sebastian, I say it to Claire, the apple did not fall far from the tree. They are just such noble people. And that's the kind of people that we need to rally around. And thankfully, I do believe President Trump and Marco Rubio will do it.
Well, Claire Lai, Congressman Chris Smith, we're grateful to you both, and we will continue to keep Jimmy Lai and your entire family, Claire, in our prayers, and certainly update our audience on this story.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.